All right, 10th grade. So, not much is really going to change in what is expected of y'all while we're on this remote learning plan, and it's kind of going to be the same thing that we usually do in class anyway. So, first off, let's go over everything that is due for y'all. You should have gotten the letter yesterday, and it was in the packet of everything that you need to do. So, each day, I'll go over what's due. Tomorrow will be the first actual lecture that we have where I'll go over and we'll talk about the French Revolution in depth. And then I'll go over your homework that you're going to have to do and what you should be completing at home. Okay? So, the first thing, we're starting the French Revolution. All right? And so I know that none of you have probably done the reading yet that I asked, but there is a reading that you're going to need to do. All right? And it starts on page 698. All right? And it literally says, the French Revolution, all right there, okay? So you're going to read that, and it goes from 698 all the way over to page 703, all right? And it ends right there where it says the Haitian Revolution. The Haitian Revolution is the second thing that we'll do, all right? So with the French Revolution, today I'm actually going to read your section to you, all right, so that it helps, all right? We'll read through the section, and then I'm going to I might stop and talk about some things, and then I'll talk about your assignment. You'll have two assignments, and another one that you'll need to do over the next 2 days. So it's not busy work, it's stuff to help you remember, because in that letter and in your book, you can see that it's a pretty popular thing on the AP exam to be tested about is the French Revolution and what led to it. All right, so first off, we're going to do your reading. All right, so if you don't have your book, grab it. Pause the video right here if you need to. If you've already read this, I would still listen to it anyway because it's always good to hear the information again. Or you can skip forward till you see me here or see me show the comparing declarations, and that's where we'll talk about your first assignment. So I'm going to read, and we're going to go over it. Remember, this is your homework is to read this, but I'm doing it for you here, and we're going to talk about it tomorrow. All right, we'll go in depth and we'll compare American Revolution and French Revolution, but you need to get that information first. Okay, so I'm starting on page 698 with the French Revolution, 1789 to 1815. Okay, and the camera keeps getting really dark, and I don't know why. All right, so actually, it's because there's a big bright light back there. But all right, so the French Revolution. Act 2 in the drama of the Atlantic Revolutions took place in France, beginning in 1789. Although it was closely connected to Act 1 in North America, talking about the American Revolution. Thousands of French soldiers had provided assistance to the American colonies and now returned home full of Republican enthusiasm. Thomas Jefferson, the U.S. ambassador in Paris, reported that France had been awakened by our revolution. More immediately, the French government, which had generously aided the Americans in an effort to undermine its British rivals, were teetering on the brink of bankruptcy, and had long sought reforms that would modernize the tax system and make it more equitable. In a desperate effort to raise taxes against the opposition of the privileged classes, the French king, Louis XVI, had called into session an ancient representative body, the Estates General. It consisted of male representatives of the three estates, or legal orders, of pre-revolutionary France: the clergy, the nobility, and the commoners. Remember, when it's talking about an estate here, the three social classes in pre-revolutionary France were the first estate, which was all of your nobility, the second estate, which was your clergy, your religious workers, and then the third estate, which was everybody else. All right. The first two estates comprised about 2% of the population, and the third estate included everyone else. When that body convened in 1789, representatives of the Third Estate soon organized themselves as the National Assembly, claiming the sole authority to make laws for the country. A few weeks later, they forthrightly claimed in the Declaration of the Rights of Man and Citizen that men are born and remain free. That men are born and remain free and equal in rights. And this declaration later became the preamble of the 1791 French Constitution. These actions, unprecedented and illegal in the Ancien Regime, the old regime, launched the French Revolution and radicalized many of the participants in the National Assembly. So this is what's telling you is leading up to the Declaration of the Rights of Man, all right, which we'll talk about, and that's what your first activity is tonight, is to compare that and the Declaration of Independence, all right, but I'll go over that later. The French Revolution was quite different from its North American predecessor. Whereas the American Revolution expressed the tensions of a colonial relationship with a distant imperial power, talking about our relationship as the colonies with England at the time, the French insurrection was driven by sharp conflicts with French society. Members of the titled nobility, privileged, prestigious, and wealthy, resented and resisted the monarchy's efforts to subject them to new taxes. So the wealthy were mad that they were getting ready to get taxed to make money. Educated middle-class men such as doctors, lawyers, lower-level officials, and merchants were growing in numbers and sometimes in wealth and were offended by the remaining privileges of the aristocracy from which they were excluded. Ordinary urban men and women, many of those whose incomes had declined for a generation, were hit particularly hard in the late 1780s by the rapidly rising price of bread and widespread unemployment. Peasants in the countryside, though largely free of serfdom, were subject to hated dues imposed by their landlords, taxes from the state, obligations to the church, and the requirement to work without pay on public roads. As Enlightenment ideas penetrated French society more and more, people mostly in the Third Estate, but also including some priests and nobles, found a language with which to articulate these grievances. The famous French writer Jean-Jacques Rousseau, who we've already talked about in the Enlightenment, had told them that it was manifestly contrary to the law of nature, that a handful of people should gorge themselves with superfluities while the hungry multitude goes in want for necessities. So what that statement says right there is that he wrote that it is insanely unfair for the rich to be able to have whatever they want and eat whatever they want and gorge themselves, all right, which means overindulge on superfluities, which is like they can have fancy cakes and wines and cheeses while all the other people in the country can't even get the necessities that they need. They can't get bread. They can't get the stuff that they need to provide for their families. All right. So going on, these social conflicts gave the French Revolution, especially during its first 5 years, a much more violent, far-reaching, and radical character than its American counterpart. It was a profound social upheaval, more comparable to the revolutions of Russia and China in the 20th century than to the earlier American Revolution. Initial efforts to establish a constitutional monarchy and promote harmony among the classes gave way to more radical measures as internal resistance and foreign opposition produced a fear that the revolution might be overturned in the process. Urban crowds organized insurrections. Some peasants attacked the residence of their lords, burning the documents that recorded their dues and payments. Think about that for a second. Why would peasants storm the lords' houses and get rid of the evidence that they even owe anything? All right. I'm on page 700 now. The National Assembly decreed the end of all legal privileges and eliminated what remained of feudalism in France. Remember, feudalism is when we have a feudalistic society where peasants and serfs, or peasants, live on somebody else's land and they owe them a portion of whatever they work. All right, that feudalistic society is where we have lords and vassals in the feudal contract, everything we learned about last year. Even slavery was abolished, albeit briefly. Church lands were sold to raise revenue and priests were put under government authority. In 1793, King Louis XVI and his queen, Marie Antoinette, were executed as an act of regicide that shocked traditionalists all across Europe and marked a new stage in revolutionary violence. So everybody revolted. They captured the king and queen and they executed them both, all right, on the guillotine, which is where that thing drops down and it chops your head off, all right? What followed was the Terror of 1793 to 1794. Under the leadership of Maximilien Robespierre. Robespierre is one of your vocabulary words that you needed to know. And his Committee of Public Safety. Tens of thousands deemed enemies of the revolution lost their lives on the guillotine. Shortly thereafter, Robespierre himself was arrested and guillotined, accused of leading France into tyranny and dictatorship. This was also known as the Reign of Terror. Just put that out there. The revolution remarked one of its victims was devouring its own children. So that statement is pretty powerful because it's talking about how these revolutionaries that wanted to see a change in France were now being captured and killed. So the revolutionaries were being devoured. The revolution was devouring its own children. All right. And here's a picture of Robespierre in your book being shoved under the guillotine. All right. So, accompanying attacks on the old order were efforts to create a wholly new society symbolized by a new calendar with the year 1 in 1792, marking a fresh start for France. So they even tried to restart the calendar to wipe the slate clean. Unlike the Americans who sought to restore or build on earlier freedoms, French revolutionaries perceived themselves to be starting from scratch and looked to the future. For the first time in its history, the country became a republic and briefly passed several universal male suffrage laws, although it was never implemented. The old administrative system was rationalized into 83 territorial departments, each with a new name, so they reorganized the government into 83 different parts. As revolutionary France prepared for war against its threatened and threatening neighbors, it created the world's largest army with some 800,000 men, and all adult males were required to serve. Led by officers from the middle and even lower classes, this was an army of citizens representing the nation. In terms of gender roles, the French Revolution did not create a new society, but it did raise the question of female political equality far more explicitly than the American Revolution had. Partly, this was because French women were active in the major events of the Revolution. In July 1789, they took part in the famous storming of the Bastille, a large fortress, prison, and armory that had come to symbolize the oppressive old regime. In October of that year, some 7,000 Parisian women is women from Paris, alright, desperate about the shortage of bread, marched on the palace at Versailles, stormed the royal apartments, searching for the despised Queen Marie Antoinette, and forced the royal family to return with them to Paris. The reason that's important is that there was such a shortage of basic necessities and food, like bread, in France, right, that the women actually banded together and marched on the royal palace, okay? And when they did that, they were searching for Marie Antoinette because she is the one that is credited with famously saying, if it's such a big deal that they need bread and that they're making such a big deal that she can sit up there and eat whatever she wants, she said, let them eat cake, all right? So they came for her, all right? Backed by a few male supporters, women also made serious political demands. They signed petitions detailing their complaints, lack of education, male competition in female trades, the prevalence of prostitution, the rapidly rising price of bread and soap. One petition, reflecting the intersection of class and gender, referred to women as the third estate of the third estate. Another demanded the right to bear arms in defense of the revolution. Over 60 women's clubs were established throughout the country. A small group called the Cercle Social, the Social Circle, campaigned for women's rights, noting that the laws favor men at the expense of women because everywhere power is in your hands. The French playwright and journalist Olympe de Gouges appropriated the language of the Declaration of Rights to insist that woman is born free and lives equal to man in her rights. But the assertion of French women in the early years of the Revolution seemed wildly inappropriate and threatening to most men, uniting conservatives and revolutionaries alike in defense of male privileges. And so, in late 1793, the country's all-male legislative body voted to ban all women's clubs. Women are ill-suited for elevated thoughts and serious meditation, declared one of the male representatives. A woman should not leave her family to meddle in affairs of government. Here was a conception of gender that defined masculinity in terms of exercising political power. Women who aspired to do so were, in the words of one revolutionary orator, denatured viragos, unnatural, domineering women. In short, not really women at all. Thus, French revolutionaries were distinctly unwilling to offer any, in theory, granted religious freedom to Jews, unwilling to offer any political rights to women, even though they had eliminated class restrictions, at least in theory. They granted religious freedom to Jews and Protestants and abolished slavery. Nonetheless, according to a leading historian, the French Revolution, more than any other event of its time, opened up the question of women's rights for consideration, and thus laid the foundations for modern feminism. So it's saying that it actually kind of got started there, and definitely not in the American Revolution, where it did not come up as much. If not in terms of gender, the immediate impact of the revolution was felt in many other ways. Streets got new names, monuments to the royal family were destroyed, titles vanished, people referred to one another as citizen so-and-so. Real politics in the public sphere emerged for the first time as many people joined political clubs, took part in marches and demonstrations, served on local communities with their served on local committees, and ran for public office. Ordinary men and women who had identified primarily with their local communities now began to think of themselves as belonging to a nation. The state replaced the Catholic Church as the place for registering births, marriages, and deaths, and revolutionary festivals substituted for church holidays. More radical revolutionary leaders deliberately sought to convey a sense of new beginnings and endless possibilities. At a festival of unity held in 1793 to mark scepters of the royal family, in 1793 to mark the first anniversary of the end of the monarchy, participants burned the crowns and scepters of the royal family in a huge bonfire while releasing a cloud of 3,000 white doves. The Cathedral of Notre Dame was temporarily turned into the Temple of Reason, while a hymn of liberty combined traditional church music with the explicit message of the Enlightenment. And it gives it to you right here. O liberty, sacred liberty, goddess of an enlightened people, rule today within these walls. Through you this temple is purified. Liberty, before you reason chases out deception. Error flees, fanaticism is beaten down. Our gospel is nature, and our cult is virtue. To love one's country and one's brother, to serve the sovereign people. These are the sacred tenets and pledge of a republican. Elsewhere, to the French Revolution evoked images of starting over. Witnessing that revolution in 1790, the young William Wordsworth, later a famous British romantic poet, imagined human nature seeming born again. Bliss it was in that dawn to be alive, he wrote, but to be young was very heaven. The French Revolution also differed from the American Revolution in the way its influence spread. At least until the United States became a world power at the end of the 19th century, what inspired others was primarily the example of its revolution and its constitution. French influence, by contrast, spread through conquest, largely under the leadership of Napoleon Bonaparte, who we spent a good deal learning about last year. A highly successful general who seized power in 1799, Napoleon is often credited with taming the revolution in the face of growing disenchantment with its more radical features and with the social conflicts it generated. He preserved many of its more moderate elements, such as civil equality, a secular law code, religious freedom, and promotion by merit, while reconciling with the Catholic Church and suppressing the revolution's more democratic elements in a military dictatorship. In short, Napoleon kept the revolution's emphasis on social equality for men, but dispensed with liberty. Like many of the revolution's ardent supporters, Napoleon was intent on spreading its benefits far and wide. In a series of brilliant military campaigns, his forces subdued most of Europe, thus creating the continent's largest empire since the day of the Romans. And you can look over there, and it kind of shows you what with the map on 702, and it shows you the French Empire, how large it actually was, those people that were allied with Napoleon, the people that kind of didn't want anything to do with it, the dependent states, and then the big battle sites. All right. Within that empire, Napoleon imposed such revolutionary practices as ending feudalism, proclaiming equality of rights, insisting on religious toleration, codifying the laws, and rationalizing government administration. In many places, these reforms were welcomed and seeds of further change were planted. But French domination also resented and resisted stimulating national consciousness throughout Europe. That too was a seed that bore fruit in the century that followed. More immediately, national resistance, particularly from Russia and Britain, brought down Napoleon and his amazing empire by 1815 and marked an end to the era of the French Revolution, though not to the potency of its ideas. And we're going to see those ideas overflow into the Haitian Revolution when we talk about that. But that's your reading, all right? So I just read it for you, and if you were listening and following along, you've got an idea now. Tomorrow, we're going to talk about the differences between the American and the French Revolution, talk a little bit more about the French Revolution in general, kind of break some of the stuff down that happened, and then I've got an assignment that you'll do tomorrow as well, all right? So your homework for today, all right? What you're going to do first is one of your words that you just read about and saw me pulled up or saw me talk about was the Declaration of the Rights of Man and Citizen, all right? In your packet, you got a copy of this worksheet right here, which is comparing declarations. So on one side, you've got the Declaration of Independence, all right, obviously from our country, and then on the other, you've got the Declaration of the Rights of Man. So you can see that the Declaration of Independence was written in 1776, and you can see that the Declaration of the Rights of Man was written in 1789. So you're going to need to read both of these, all right? And then on the back, make sure you put your name on it. You're going to compare the two, all right? So what makes the Declaration of Independence the Declaration of Independence? What makes the Declaration of the Rights of Man the Declaration of the Rights of Man? And what characteristics do they have in common, okay? Tomorrow, I'll go over it. So if you're following along and watching everything, all right, you'll have the answers, all right? But I want you to have it filled out, right, so that you're not trying to scramble through everything and get it all done. Then it's got you questions at the bottom that you need to answer, okay? And so on there you've got what is the purpose of each of these documents? So why were they written, all right? Which aspects of the Enlightenment are reflected in these two documents? So we've talked about the Enlightenment. We talked about those ideas of personal liberties, personal rights, personal freedoms. How are they talked about in each of those documents? How does the Declaration of the Rights of Man define liberty? All right, because in there it will define it. All right, and so do you agree with that? All right, so that's a personal opinion as long as you answer it. And then using these definitions, are Americans denied their liberty in any sense today? So if you use the definition of freedom in the Declaration of the Rights of Man, are we denied our freedom in any way today in the United States? All right, so you're going to complete that worksheet. All right, and then that will be due to turn in with your packet whenever you bring your work back to school. All right, the second thing that I want you to do that you'll have to turn in for a grade is you're going to write 2 paragraphs about the French Revolution, okay? And on your paper, all right, it says to write 2 paragraphs on what caused the French Revolution and the effects of it after. So that reading that we just did, all right, tells you about everything that is on there. And I apologize because my dogs won't shut up. All right, Mason! All right, so you're going to write a paragraph about what caused it, and you're going to write a paragraph of what came after. All right, it very explicitly tells you what caused the French Revolution and what happened after. All right, so it's super easy. All right, should not take you long at all. After that, what you need to start on today, all right, is I gave you another thing in your packet, and it's the French Revolution Interactive Timeline. Okay, in there it gives you a piece of paper where you're going to cut out the information, all right, and then it shows you an example of how you're going to do it. So you need 2 sheets of notebook paper in your notebook, or a longer piece of paper if you have it. You're going to create the timeline, and then it gives you your events that you're going to put on there. Okay, that's going to be done over today and tomorrow, all right? But I would knock it all out today because you've got some of the information, and some of the information you'll have to look up online, all right? You're going to be turning that timeline into me for a grade as well, okay? So we've read the reading, or you can do it on your own. You're going to do the Declaration of the Rights of Man and comparing the declarations. You're going to write your 2 paragraphs of what caused everything and what happened after. And then after that, you can start on the timeline, or you can go ahead and knock all of it out, or just do part of it. All right. Tomorrow we'll compare the 2 revolutions. We'll do another activity that I'll have planned for you, and then we'll look at the Haitian Revolution as well. And then we'll kind of compare everything and move on Thursday. All right. So if you have any questions, please feel free to let me know. And we'll go from there. But I think that's about everything, and we're still on track to be okay. All right. I think that's it. All right. I'll talk to you tomorrow.